Hello and welcome to another Stamp with Amy K Facebook Live video. And I'm just out here making sure that I'm live where I want to be, which it looks like I am. And I'm trying to pull the video up here quick so that I can make sure that I can see your comments coming in, which hopefully I'll get that done in just a second. There we go. I see the video now. So it looks like I'm live and okay, good deal. And I'm live where I want to be. So that's awesome. All right. So thanks so much if you're joining me today. Stop in and say hello. And I've got a little card that I'm going to show you that I made with the Itty Bitty Christmas stamp set bundle, which is a really good, a new stamp set from the holiday catalog. And it's got tons of holiday and Christmas sentiments in it, which is obviously by the name Itty Bitty Christmas would mean that there are quite a few sentiments in it. And Stampin' Up! This time has actually bundled this with a good set of dies. It's just some sort of snowflakey looking dies as well as some greenery type dies. So hey, Catherine, thanks for joining today. And Nancy, and nice to see you today too. So anyway, so this is the die set. It's bundled together and you save 10% on this if you purchase them as the bundle in the new holiday catalog. So, all right. Hey, Patricia, I'm glad that you're joining today. And Kay, nice to see you guys. So, all right. So we've got, this is the card that I'm going to show you today real quickly how I made. But a couple of things that I wanted to remind you about before I get started on my card is that Stampin' Up! Does have their buy 3, get 1 free designer series paper sale going on right now through the end of September. And it is on a select list of designer series papers and they are listed out here. Hopefully you can read it on the screen. Hey, hello, Judy. Thanks for joining from Alabama. So, and I see Kay is here too as well from North Carolina. So good to see you ladies. All right, so here's the list of designer series papers. You can mix and match these however you want. You can buy all 4 of the same. You can buy 2 and 2. You can buy one of each, one of 4 different types, whatever you want to do. The one other nice thing is that you can actually purchase, they have one of their specialty designer series papers on here. And that's $14.50 and the other packs are all $11.50. And you can buy 3 of the $11.50 packs and get the $14.50 pack for free, which is a little unusual because a lot of times you can't purchase the higher price. You have to purchase the higher price in order to get a lower price item for free. The other thing I wanted to remind you about is that I am offering a double running shoe reward points ordering bonus right now through the end of the day today to kick off the new holiday catalog. So if you place an order of $50 or greater through my online store through the end of the day today, which is Tuesday, September 10th, you'll get double points on your order. So if you have any questions about that, let me know. All right, let's go ahead and get started on the card. So for the background, this is watercolor paper, and that's just one of the items that's in the Stampin' Up! Catalog. This is a little bit smaller panel just because I'm going to show you how I made this here, and then I actually have a different one ready to go. So that you don't have to sit and watch the paper dry because it takes a little bit of time when you use watercolor paper. So to start with, I'm using Coastal Cabana ink. There are a couple different ways you can watercolor with it. For this particular technique, because I'm going to be using a fair amount of ink and covering the whole background, you can squeeze it in the center and then transfer some of the ink to the inside of the lid, which I can show you how to do that, but it's you just squeeze it real hard in the center. And then you'll see a little spot of ink appears on the inside and you can take your aqua painter and pick it up. But I am finding that when I do the background techniques like this where I'm covering an entire panel, it's actually easier to use a little bit of the ink refill. Hey, Akiko, thanks for joining today. And I just take a little drop of that and put it on the lid as well. So, and again, it's Coastal Cabana ink that I'm using today, so I'm going to set that aside. When you do a watercolor wash, you want to make sure that you cover the entire panel in water first. Hey, Linda, thanks for hopping in today. So, want to cover the entire panel in water first, and that allows the ink to sort of move around a little more evenly. Hey, Rosie, goodness, got a good group today, so thanks for joining. Getting the entire panel wet first allows you to be able to move the ink around a little bit easier, and you don't end up with big globs of dark ink, usually, all in one place. Sometimes if you go straight from the ink pad and go to your watercolor paper, you're going to get a real dark spot on it, and it's hard to get rid of that once you get it. So, hey, I see Beth is out there joining today too, so thanks for hopping in. All right, so we're just going to use water, and I'm just squeezing the aqua painter a little bit, getting the panel wet to start with just plain water. And I try not to get it too wet. Hey, Vicki, thanks for joining, and I see Sarah's here as well. So I try not to get the panel really soaking wet. Just get it wet, get it damp, I guess would be probably the better word to say. And then we're going to start picking up some of that ink, and we're going to go ahead and start putting it out here on the panel. When I do this particular type of watercolor background, I sort of wanted a white edge around it. So how I do that is I kind of give myself a little line and just put some ink around it kind of in a square, and then fill in the center. And it's a messy technique. There's no specific like, oh, you have to do it a certain way, whatever. I just kind of put the ink on, get it on the paper, and then move it around with my aqua painter when I get it there. So, and it just creates kind of a nice soft background. And then usually when I've done this and I've kind of gone along the edges and given it a fairly straight line, I'll run my aqua painter a little bit along the edges just to make sure that I don't have a straight line down it, because I want it to look a little soft and a little messy. And sometimes when I've drawn the straight line down it, it doesn't give that nice, I don't know, sort of smooth, soft look to it when I do that. So, all right, so that is it. That's all that you need to do. And then just set it aside. And hey, Vicki, I see you're out there too. So. Yes, Beth, it is watercolor paper. So, yep, sorry if you missed the first part. So, yep, definitely watercolor paper for this technique. If you use anything else, you're not going to get a real good result from it. You'll end up with paper pilling, and it'll be kind of messy and not the look you're looking for. So that's it. So, yep, just a little watercolor paper, a little bit of water, and then a little touch of ink, and you've got a pretty background. So I'm going to set that aside and let that piece dry, just because it takes a little bit of time, especially the watercolor paper is fairly thick. So if you're going to stamp on it afterwards and don't want the runny kind of look where you're sort of getting a smeary stamped image, you're definitely going to want to let it set aside and dry. And it doesn't take a really long time, but it probably takes 10 minutes or so. So I went ahead and did a panel ahead of time for us that we could start using on this card. And again, I'm using Coastal Cabana ink, and I'm using the little spots from the Peaceful Boughs stamp set, which is another new one from the holiday catalog. And I'm just going to use these little dot images to make it look like it's snowing a little bit on the background. So inking it up in Coastal Cabana ink, going to stamp it off on scrap paper and just sort of randomly stamp it over the card front here to give it a little bit of, like I said, kind of a snow effect on the background. I'm trying to turn the stamp just a little bit as I go and do this so that it's not giving the exact same image everywhere all the time. And I think that looks pretty good. So we'll give that a try to start with. Close that up and set it aside. And then I went ahead and pre-cut some of the die cuts from Sparkle Glimmer paper with the dies from the Itty Bitty Christmas stamp set bundle, which again, the specific dies that I used are this one and this one for this particular card. And again, just use the Sparkle Glimmer paper to make it look, hopefully you can see that on the screen, but it's a little sparkly, it looks a little bit like snow. So let's go ahead and add a few spots of multi-purpose liquid glue to the back of the card. Hopefully add a few spots and not a couple big globs, which I am known for. Liquid glue is not always my friend, but I do try. So hopefully y'all are having a good day, and I think that the construction in the yard next to us is finally done. I haven't heard the heavy equipment out there banging around recently, so I'm hoping that they're done digging up their septic, whatever issue it was, and fixing that. So, all right, then I'm going to go ahead and place this about right there, and then press it down here, and hold it for just a second to make sure that that glue sticks and doesn't stick to my fingers like it usually does. And then we've got one more little snowflake here that I'm going to add just some touches of liquid glue on the back of that one. And I'm going to adhere that one down here a little bit more in the corner, kind of away from the rest of the set. All right, looks like we got it, and I didn't even stick it to my fingers, so yay. All right, so the next thing that I did was added a little bit of the Cherry Cobbler diagonal stripe ribbon, which again is from the holiday catalog. This is one of those real pretty ribbons that it's a little bit more Cherry Cobbler on one side, and then the other side is a little bit more of the white with just a little less of the Cherry Cobbler. So depending on the look that you want, you can either go with a little more white or a little bit more Cherry Cobbler. And for this particular card, I wanted a little more cherry cobbler, so that is the side that I've done, or that I'm going to adhere with a little bit of snail to the card front. And again, because it's just ribbon, we don't need a lot of real heavy-duty adhesive on that one, so snail should hold it just fine in place. All right, got that part done, and I'm going to set that aside for a second while I pull out a little piece of cherry cobbler cardstock, and I'm going to use some Versamark ink. And we are going to heat emboss, so you're going to get to hear a bunch of loud, instead of the equipment next door, it's just going to be the heat tool going. So, all right, going to stamp a little. This is a sentiment from the Itty Bitty Christmas stamp set, stamping that in Versamark ink. Let me close that up before I stick everything in it that I don't want in it. And we got a little bit of white Stampin' Emboss powder. All right, so, well, thanks for hopping in for a minute, Rosalie, and have a very good night. I do know it's the middle of the night there, and hopefully you sleep well. So, all right, so we're going to use a little bit of white Stampin' Emboss powder, and hopefully I'll get the little extra flecks off here. All right, I think that looks good. And we are going to turn on the heat tool here, so this is going to make a bunch of noise. Hey, Suzanne, thanks for joining. Give it just a second to heat up a minute, and then we're going to start embossing. And you can use the heat tool actually when you are doing the watercolor wash, like I just had it, did the background. You can use the heat tool on the level 1 setting to dry, but I didn't want to do that on screen because it does kind of make a lot of noise, as you can hear. So, and nobody wants to listen to that for 5 minutes while I dry everything. So, all right, so we're going to give that a second. So heat emboss the image, and then I'm going to take one of the stitched rectangles dies, which this one in particular is the one that I'm going to be using, and we're going to cut out the sentiment. So I'm going to slide over to the side and cut the sentiment on die cutting machine quick. So give me 1 second and I'll be right back. I just didn't want to, hopefully I'm not going to wiggle the screen too much while I'm over here. All right. Okay, I'm back and that part is all done, so we'll pop that out of the die. And we're going to go ahead and come back to our watercolor panel. I'm going to add a couple of my little half Stampin' Dimensionals, which I know if Mary were on, she'd be going crazy right now because I'm sticking it on with half Stampin' Dimensionals, but I am. And I'm trying to slide them up a little bit towards the top just because I have the ribbon on here, and hopefully I won't cause too much of a bump in the sentiment when I adhere it on, because I hopefully will get the dimensionals right above the ribbon. Hopefully. If I don't have all the covers stuck to me instead. So, all right, so let me see. Hopefully we're getting us on here fairly straight. Okay. I think that looks good. And then the last thing that I did, well, second to last thing, because I still have to stick it on the card front, but I added a couple of the frosted and clear epoxy droplets. In particular on this card, I used the frosted ones because I wanted it to look a little bit more like snow, and I just sort of randomly adhered a couple of them around the sentiment and in with the snowflakes to add a few. I'm going to move this one down just a little bit. Make it look like there are a few little more sparkly pieces of snow, I guess. All right, so let's get those adhered down, and then we're going to take some Stampin' Dimensionals, and I'm going to adhere this onto a Coastal Cabana card base. So while I'm doing this, I'm going to tell you that I do use a few more Stampin' Dimensionals when I'm adhering on watercolor paper, just because it does tend to sort of get a little bit lumpy, which nobody likes a lumpy card, but so it does get a little bit bumpy on the front sometimes, just because the watercolor paper it gets wet and it doesn't dry perfectly flat. It dries fairly flat, but not perfectly flat. So usually if you just add a little bit of extra, whatever adhesive it is that you're using, that usually fixes the problem. All right, so we've got a Coastal Cabana card base that I'm adhering this panel on. And hopefully I'll get everything centered and straight. All right, and that is it for the card front. So the inside of the card, I went ahead and did a little bit of stamping ahead of time, and I just used that same dot image that I'd used on the background, only I stamped it full strength from the Peaceful Boughs stamp set in Coastal Cabana ink across the top. And then this is one of the sentiments from the Itty Bitty Christmas stamp set that I stamped in Cherry Cobbler for the sentiment inside the card. Just going to use a little bit of snail to adhere that onto the inside of the card base. Make sure we've got everything right set up. Because I've done it before, I've adhered it on upside down, and then you kind of have to fix it at the last second. So, all right, so that is it for the card. Let's do a little quick crease here with a bone folder to make sure we've got a good crease on the card, and then I'll bring out the original one. This one I did make to open more like a book card, so this is 8.5 by 5.5, scored at 4 1/4, and then this one I made to look more flip open a little bit differently. So this one's going to go up to the top. So this one's 4 1/4 by 11, scored at 5.5. But you get the same basic effect from the cards, just a little bit different way to open it. So, all right. Well, thank you very much for joining today. Let me know if you have any questions, and I will plan to be back next week, Tuesday, with another video. But until then, you can check out the details for this card project on my blog tomorrow. I'll be posting everything out there. And thanks a lot for joining me today, and hope you have a good rest of your Tuesday.